Well, the corporate-owned media is at it once again. They've built up a hero only to help tear him back down. Why? In the name of money. Because sensationalism equals profits for the corporate-owned media. It's no longer about freedom of the press like is covered under the First Amendment in our Bill of Rights of the Constitution. It's about the corporate-owned media, trying to ensure their bottom line and maximize their profits. And they've learned that the American people feed off of sensationalism, or if they don't fully, after being programmed to do so enough, they're going to feed off of sensationalism, with a real emphasis on two things. That's the great comeback story and scandal. And you clearly can see both of these playing out in the case of Lance Armstrong. This is a former cancer survivor, well, I guess technically still a cancer survivor, but he once fought a very tough and very long battle against testicular cancer. It proved to be, almost fatal to him. But he came back almost miraculously to be a 7-time Tour de France winner. 7 straight years he won the Tour de France. And in a lot of ways, Lance Armstrong became a representation of hope. He became a representation of cancer doesn't have to be the end of your life. It could be a new beginning. And he became a spokesman for the fight against cancer and for life after cancer. And he became, in the post-Michael Jordan sports world, along with Tiger Woods, perhaps the second most well-known United States athlete in terms of a global perspective. All out of a sport like cycling. Think about that. Lance Armstrong, cannot emphasize this enough, became a huge international star. Became a corporate spokesman for people such as Nike. He became the face of a foundation that was helping to lead the fight against cancer in Livestrong. And it almost, when you thought about it, this is a guy who cancer almost took his life from him. He fought against it, came back, became the very best at what he did, one of the most well-known athletes in the world, had all of this going so well for him. And you sit there, and I know I did for many years in the back of my mind, and I was hoping this wasn't the case. But deep down, when I stopped being idealistic about it and became pragmatic about it, I said, this is almost too good to be true. And as we find out now, it really was. After years of fighting back against allegations that were leveled first against the U.S. Postal Service team that Armstrong was a part of, and then obviously against Armstrong himself, after years and years of fighting back against allegations, Lance Armstrong, apparently now to Oprah Winfrey, is finally ready and has confessed to blood doping and basically cheating. And when we look at the sport of cycling, we have to be realistic. This is a sport where cheating is an epidemic. And it's almost to the point where if you don't cheat, you're behind the curve. And if you really think about it in that sense, if somebody does blood dope or use steroids or human growth hormone or cheats or what have you, if everybody else is doing it, is that really cheating, or are you leveling the playing field? Now, in no way is that necessarily excusing the behavior, because just because everybody else is doing it doesn't mean that you should. As an analogy, our parents told us many times, I'm sure, and I know I heard it a lot of times as a kid growing up, when you would go up to them and say, I want to do this, and they said no, and you said, well, everybody else is doing it, and they would always come back at you with what? Well, if everybody else jumped off a bridge, would you do it? And then if you said yes, you got smacked upside your face, and you know you did. And it's a valid point in this case. Just because everybody else is doing it doesn't mean that you should do it yourself. Now, on the same token, if you don't do it yourself, then you're behind the 8 ball and you maybe never have a chance. So if everybody's cheating the same, the talent still shines. And in this case, Armstrong's talent obviously did shine. He won 7 straight Tour de France titles. But over the years, as there were starting to get more questions about steroid use or blood doping and cheating, Armstrong was defiant. He was stubbornly persistent in proclaiming his innocence, to the point where now, with making a confession, he potentially, put himself in trouble in terms of perjury by testifying under oath that he was not a cheater. He did not blood dope. He did not use steroids of any kind. And I guess my question is, after all these years, after all of the good that came from the Lance Armstrong story, and after all of this time of so stubbornly insisting it to everybody and anybody that would listen, and daring to question anybody that would ever say, no, you're a cheater. In fact, suing newspapers or magazines for libel, for defamation of character, what have you, because they would post stories talking about Armstrong being a cheater and he would fight back against it and win. Now all of a sudden, Lance Armstrong, the conscience has gotten the best of you and you're going to confess now? Why? And before I even talk about why, I just wonder with this country, I just wonder if we artificially, and because maybe this is a corporate-owned media, what have you, we want other people to do really well, but we don't necessarily want them to do too well where they make us feel like shit for the lives that we have. Is this an example of somebody had too much success and too many positive things going on in his life where we were chomping at the bit as a society, as a people, waiting to tear this MFer down and knock him down the ladder? I think sadistically, that is part of the mindset in this country as a whole. And it's almost like, is it really worth it? Did we really need to dig this deeply? Was whether or not he was a blood doper or a cheater that important? Was it worth damaging the Lance Armstrong name? Was it worth damaging everything he had built up in terms of a public image to help against the fight against cancer, excuse me? Was it worth it? Or is this an example of Lance Armstrong being incredibly self-absorbed D-bag? I mean, because for so many years he's fought against it. For so many years he's called people liars for saying what ultimately turned out to be true. Why, after all of this time, is he bother confessing? There's got to be something in this for him. Is it because he feels with the perjury situation that the statute of limitations has expired so he can't get in trouble for that? Is it that, well, if he has to repay some money to sponsors, he's not going to come that much out of pocket? You know, as far as clearing his conscience, I don't buy that bullshit because he lied to people and he cheated for so many years and reaped so much benefits from it. Now all of a sudden, it's going to be like, oh, he found God. Well, wait, that'll be the next thing. He found God. And he got a guilty conscience and he decided it was time to do the right thing. Bullshit. Is this because he's got a book deal coming up? He's going to get paid for appearances? Is this because he wants to compete again like in triathlons, what have you? I mean, is Lance Armstrong this much of an egomaniac and this much of a self-absorbed moron that after all of these years of perpetrating this sham, this fraud, this lie all around the world, he thinks that now's the time of all times to come clean? I don't get it. I don't get it. But then on the flip side of this, I said, frankly, who cares? Look at all of the good that came from Lance Armstrong coming back from cancer and winning the 7 Tour de France's. A lot of good came from this. And I just wonder, is this an example of because somebody did too well, and because this country loves scandals so much, and the corporate-owned media loves sensationalism and loves feeding our love of scandals by forcing scandals down our throat, is this an example where yet again we have allowed corporate-owned media to set the narrative for us because in this age of information, we have too much of a sheep mentality and are too eager and easily led to believe the first thing that is presented to us and the first thing that we are told to believe? He cheated in a sport where everybody else cheated. He became the face of a foundation that has raised millions upon millions of dollars in the fight against this scourge of a disease called cancer. And I'm sure most everybody watching this, just like me, has either been affected by it personally, the disease of cancer, or has lost somebody because of cancer. So was it worth knocking Lance Armstrong down off of this perch, off of this pedestal, knowing that there could be potentially serious and significant ramifications and consequences of this. And overall, when we talk about this country, the United States, it's like in recent years with our athletes, we've gotten this huge obsession with steroids and cheating and dot dot dot. We focus more on whether or not Barry Bonds or Sosa or Clemens is juicing, or if Lance Armstrong's blood doping, than what we do focus on the criminals in Washington, D.C. and what the fuck they're doing to ruin this damn country. But as long as our athletes are clean and aren't cheating, that's more important. And we wonder why America is no longer the greatest country in the world. And make no mistake about it, it is not. Get off of that idealistic high horse that it is. Other countries have freedom. Other countries have lower crime rates. Other countries have better education systems than ours. Other countries aren't slaves to their debt like we are, 16 trillion plus and counting by the moment. But we're obsessed with whether or not our athletes use steroids. It's freaking ridiculous. But then I asked the question, was the cheating really justified? Can you excuse the cheating for all the potential good that it did end up leading to? Because here's an important question. If you do something that's illegal, but a lot of people benefit from it, does that change the fact that it was still illegal? And if you're a parent and you're trying to teach your kid right from wrong, and then you're teaching them that this is a good role model, and in that case, in that time, Lance Armstrong was a great role model for kids to a certain degree about how to overcome obstacles, to never give up on life, and to work hard to achieve your dreams, and by God, he did, and to do good for your common man. And he did all that. Now, as a parent, if you have taught your kids that somebody like Lance Armstrong is someone to pattern your life after, and then you find out that he was a fraud and he had no integrity, I mean, what type of message does that send to our kids in this country? Is it worth sacrificing our principles? Is it worth sacrificing integrity for some other type of gain? And I don't think it is. I think it's a tremendous problem that we're focused in this country too much on sensationalism, that we're focused too much on great comeback stories, and then a lot of times just to inevitably tear them down because of scandal. I think the obsession with steroid use of our athletes is ridiculous when there are far, 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 far bigger problems that we should be concerned with as a country and as a planet as a whole. But that does not change the fact that Lance Armstrong lied for years. He cheated 4 years. He was very cocky, arrogant, and stubbornly forcing this line of BS, this fraud, this sham, down our effing throats. So from a personal standpoint, yes, I realize that there's a lot of good that has come from what Lance Armstrong did. But that doesn't justify what he did. And he's still wrong for it. And to me, all that money that was raised for the Livestrong Foundation, all that money raised for cancer research and fighting against cancer, to me is like blood money. Because it wasn't gotten via legitimate ways. Like I said before, if you do something that's illegal, or you cheat the system, and it benefits a lot of people, it doesn't change the fact that you still cheated the system. You still did something illegal. I hope Lance Armstrong is happy with himself, because at this point in time, there was no reason anymore to come forward. At least perpetuate the lie if you're going to do it. This is, to me, the ultimate example of being an egomaniac. Of, well, I perpetrated this lie all these years, and I got all this benefit from it, and now, when there's so much damage that could be done by me confessing, I'm going to do it anyways because it'll make me feel better at night. And I'll still get things like a book deal. I'll get paid for these personal appearances, these speaking fees, what have you. The best thing that could happen, quite frankly, at this point, is Lance Armstrong to just go the hell away.